on text from texters talking about their own purchases. A number agreeing with your point of view, Lisa, and some of them supporting Prof Lang. A bit to ask you about before we go. The latest ministerial and MPs' expense reports are out. Most attention has been paid to the pizza party in Nathan Guy's office, $129.50 worth of pizza pomodoro. Do you care about Nathan Guy's pizzas?
No.
Short answer, no. These stories about MPs' expenses, unless it's absolutely outrageous, I just can't see it as a story. And I'm in the press gallery, and I should be looking at this stuff. But in the end, it's just a bunch of expenses that aren't that shocking. You look at them, and if they're not shocking, you don't report them. That's what I reckon. But I'm always surprised at how much attention they get.
Yeah,
How
I
much?
think it's relevant. Yeah, they're nothing wild in there.
All right, nothing wild. I would like to ask Bernard, how much value for money is there, do you think, in Jonathan Coleman's $432 on a subscription to The Economist and $493.72 for the Financial Times?
Well,
do you get as much out of these paywalled financial papers, Bernard, that you can't find in free media?
Well, I'm sort of so biased here because I run a paywalled financial news organisation, sort of. And actually, I'm also a subscriber to The Economist and The Financial Times, and so I pay those exact same amounts that Jonathan Coleman did, and I think it's worth it. And for a cabinet minister, I think that seems like a fair thing to do.
Couldn't you go up to his office and just read them?
That's right. Yeah. Perhaps he should. Hopefully, I hope there's some sort of corporate subscription the government's got, so that there's not 20 cabinet ministers all paying the same amount per subscription. They've done some sort of deal. But
Are they all subscribed to yours? I should hope so.
Actually, they do. So I'm pretty pleased about that too. Yeah.
That's very good. They should.
A Dunedin City Council car with inspection vehicle on the side. This has been news in Dunedin this week. A Dunedin City Council car, inspection vehicle on it, driven by a member of the DCC's transport staff, parked on yellow lines and on top of a fire hydrant, and the staff member disappeared inside a coffee shop for a chinwag of some sort. People pointing out that other people have been ticketed by those same transport staff for parking on those same yellow lines.
Not good enough.
The council says the staff member has been spoken to. Is that good enough?
I would have thought a big old fine for the council officer would be quite fun, and I'd like to see a council officer give a fine to the other council officer. That'd be fun to watch.
Yeah, it's not good enough. It's not a good look.
You'd like to see a video of the one council officer getting a fine.
That's a viral video if ever I heard one.
You were talking about inflation. I might be able to squeeze this in before going. The question asked by, actually it was Finlay MacDonald, I think, on the panel the other day, why isn't house inflation part of the CPI? And I notice Shamabil Yaqub has now come out and said it's a problem that the Consumer Price Index doesn't include house price inflation. Why not? It captures rents, but not prices of houses.
Yeah, there's this debate about whether asset prices should be included in a consumer price index, and land prices is what's missing from the consumer price index. Shamabil is saying, let's include land prices in that index, because obviously that's what you pay for. If you buy a house, you're not just buying the house, you buy the land as well, and you're having to pay the mortgage on that. Rents are included in the CPI, so that's sort of covered, but it's the land price part of the equation if you own a house and you're paying the mortgage, because bizarrely finance costs, particularly mortgage costs, are also not included in the CPI, and you get a much better measure in the CPI if you included land costs. But that's where the debate is. Is it an asset or is it a price of a good or a service?
Indeed, because we have a consumer price index that some people think simply doesn't reflect the struggle people are having.
Particularly at the low end. If you're on a low to middle income, often your costs are much higher than for the CPI generally.
Bernard Hickey, thank you for your company on the panel today. And Lisa Tamati, always nice to have you back too, Lisa. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Cheers.
I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
I hope you both have a nice weekend. I hope everybody has a nice weekend. Thanks for listening to the panel this week. Checkpoint with John Campbell coming right up.
Kia ora everyone, I'm John Campbell, and on behalf of our team, haere mai, welcome to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Tau te maira I hoa mai, hei kōrero, kei te haere, hei kaupapa, kei te karawhiua. Tonight, the Hawke's Bay water crisis enters its second week and officials are no closer, it seems, to identifying the cause. Meanwhile, we talk to a woman in hospital with Guillain-Barré syndrome. A gold, 2 silvers and 2 bronze medals in Rio makes this New Zealand's biggest ever Olympic haul. We have the latest on the group of swimmers who lied about being robbed. We speak to a woman who's been living in fear after the police failed to respond to her 111 call. Wellington's cable car and its big old facelift, plus steel, the Bledisloe Cup, and a former Olympian joins us in the studio, bringing in his 9-year-old son and a pet lamb. Not even Rural Report has had a pet lamb live in the studio. All of that and more coming up. But first, Katrina Batten with RNZ News.
Kia ora, good evening. The Hawke's Bay District Health Board is warning there is the potential for people who've suffered from gastric illness to suffer unusual complications. More than 4,000 have been reported ill because of Havelock North's water supply being contaminated with Campylobacter, and 17 people remain in hospital. The DHB's Chief Executive, Kevin Snee, says there is a possibility a few people could develop the rare disorder Guillain-Barré syndrome. The symptoms include weakening muscles and sometimes complete paralysis. Mr. Snee says there could be a few cases of reactive arthritis as well.
There are potential relatively unusual complications that can come about as a consequence of Campylobacter. If either you're not getting better from Campylobacter or you start to become unwell again, you get in touch with a general practitioner or make contact with Healthline, bring it to our attention so it can be dealt with.
Kevin Snee says medical staff have been briefed on the symptoms of any complications from the gastric bug. The Havelock North water contamination crisis has other councils around the country checking the same thing couldn't happen to them. Christchurch doesn't chlorinate its water supply, and City councillors will next week consider a report on the risks. The man in charge of drinking water quality for Christchurch, John Campbell, says the water comes from natural aquifers deep under the ground.
If the risk that you see in Hawke's Bay is not tolerable in Christchurch, then we need to have that discussion. You know, you've heard the comments about the Hawke's Bay being pristine water sources, and can there be anything as a guaranteed pristine source? And I think we're seeing that the risk is still there, however small, unless we have that disinfection.
John Campbell of the Christchurch City Council. Hutt City Council, which also doesn't chlorinate, is also watching the situation in Hastings District carefully. A national day to commemorate the battles of the New Zealand Wars 150 years ago has been approved by the government. The Deputy Prime Minister, Bill English, made the announcement at Tūranga Waiwai Marae today. Andrew McRae reports from the marae.
The decision to have a national day comes after representation from Māori and a petition handed to Parliament last year. The government acknowledgement came at a ceremony on the marae where the title and deeds for the Rangariri battle site were returned to Waikato Tainui. The land was confiscated after the battle in 1863 between colonial troops and Māori. Bill English says a commemoration day will give recognition to ordinary people who lost their lives fighting for principle in this country, in the same way New Zealand soldiers did on the battlefields of Europe. He says a process is in place to find a date for the National Day. I Tūranga Waiwai Marae ko Andrew McRae tēnei.
The police say they botched their handling of an emergency call from a Kaitaia woman who feared a home invasion. The woman was followed by a car after she left work last Saturday night. She called 111 when she got home and sat up all night with her 2 children waiting for a patrol car. The police in the far north have apologised, saying their response did not meet the usual standard of putting victims first. The acting area commander, Inspector Ricky Few, says it appears the details of the call were not dispatched to the police in Kaitaia. He says it's disappointing a further communication breakdown meant the woman has not been contacted by police since. Mr Few says they're now trying to contact the woman. The Building and Housing Minister, Nick Smith, says the government is tightening the requirements for ensuring steel mesh is up to standard. The government is calling for submissions on proposed changes to the building code to strengthen the mesh. Dr Smith says it's increasing the number of tests required, clarifying exactly how the tests are done and requiring them to be done by internationally accredited testing laboratories.
The building sector is going through a boom that will put extra pressure on the quality assurance systems That's why the government's putting more money into MB's work in this area. There's actually over 30 areas where we are tightening the standards to ensure that we get the quality of homes, but we also make sure that we're supporting the growth and the quality as well.
The Building and Housing Minister, Nick Smith. The United States Olympic Committee has apologised to the people of Brazil for what it's described as the unacceptable behaviour of a group of swimmers who said they'd been robbed at gunpoint in Rio. In a statement, Team USA said, as it understood, one of the 4 swimmers had vandalised a toilet in a petrol station. The police in Rio say one of the men has admitted the story about a robbery was not true. In sport, the bronze medal-winning shot putter Tom Walsh says he's stoked with his performance in this afternoon's Olympic final, but can't shake off some disappointment about not winning gold. The 24-year-old has become the first New Zealand man to win a medal in an Olympic field event after he threw 21.36 metres with his penultimate effort. The gold medal winner, American's Ryan Cruiser, won with an Olympic record throw of 22.52 metres. Tom Walsh says it was an awesome feeling to win bronze, but he thinks he could have done better.
I was feeling good, and then I just started pushing things a little bit rather than letting things happen. It sounds easy to fix, but sometimes it's very hard to fix, and especially on the big stage as well.
The shot putter Tom Walsh. It's the most successful day in Olympic history for the New Zealand team, which claimed 5 medals. The sailors Peter Burling and Blair Tuke officially won gold in the 49er class, while the women's 470 and 49er crews both claimed silvers. Earlier this morning, the kayaker Lisa Carrington won bronze in her 500-metre race. Meanwhile, the Jamaican sprinter Usain Bolt has won his 8th gold medal after blitzing the field in the men's 200-metre race. Bolt, who ran in the final in 19.78 seconds, is the first man to win the 200-metre event at 3 Olympics in a row. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, a musical mixtape from Alex Bean. He'll be hosting his first Music 101 tomorrow afternoon. Get a sneak preview before midnight this evening. Country Life follows the money to the source of the honey. We wrap up our Olympic coverage with our overseas sports correspondents. What did they make of Rio 2016? And we have a Sonic Tonic dedicated to letters, those things you used to write before emails came along. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to tomorrow midnight. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula. Fine spells and the odd shower in the east. In the west, from Waikato to Wellington, including Bay of Plenty and the central high country, fine. Gisborne to Wairarapa, cloudy periods with isolated light showers, clearing in Wairarapa tomorrow. Bulla, Nelson, Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland, mostly fine, but a few areas of low cloud or fog in the morning and isolated showers for Nelson and Bulla tomorrow. A chance of an afternoon shower tomorrow for Otago and Southland. Westland and Fiordland, cloudy periods, a few light showers south of Hokitika, turning to rain tomorrow, and cloudy periods for the Chatham Islands. It's 5:08.
Thanks, Katrina. As Havelock North's water crisis enters its second week, the community appears no closer to knowing what caused the Campylobacter outbreak, which has made thousands of people ill. The Hawke's Bay District Health Board has revised up its estimate of the number of people made sick to 4,100. But ratepayers say they're furious with the council and they no longer feel safe drinking the town's water.
My husband was quite sick with it, and I've got a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old who both came down with it, but quite mildly. I don't feel safe drinking it from anything but bottled water now after what's happened with the tankers and things.
My son and his partner and twins stayed at my house in Havelock, and they'd sleep over and they all got sick. He's just gone back to work, but he's had about 7 days of it.
As a teacher in Havelock North, I've now had 5 days without effective classroom learning, so it's sad for the parents and the children with respect to their student achievement.
I think the council have got a lot to answer for.
They should have done something about it a long time ago.
I think they're probably doing the best that they can do, but I don't really know enough about it. So,
do you like the chlorine in the water?
No, I actually drank the water from the aquifer in Hastings, yeah.
I don't like that at all, but I mean it has to happen, but I'm not drinking chlorinated water. I just still buying bottled water or getting bottled water.
I'm really not happy about it. I know that seems to be the only fix, but when you bathe your children and get them out and they stink like public swimming pools, that's pretty awful, and the taste of it's disgusting. But if that's the only answer, then that's the answer, isn't it?
I just hope that for the public of Havelock North, for the young and the elderly particularly, that we can get a resolution as quickly as possible. And I think people are handling the situation incredibly well and they're being tolerant. But it would just be nice to get a resolution.
The Hawke's Bay District Health Board says as of midnight last night, nobody presented to the emergency department with Campylobacter, which indicates the number of sick people is now waning. But as our reporter Peter Fowler discovered, those going door to door to check on the sick and the elderly say they are still finding people in desperate situations.
This is the end of the second week of the Havelock North water disaster. It began silently as water infected with potentially deadly E. coli started flowing through the taps of the town of 13,000 people. 2 to 5 days later, people started getting sick. By today, the District Health Board says half of households have been infected. The number rose to 4,100, or about a third of the town. And authorities still can't tell the community how it happened. District Health Board Chief Executive Kevin Snee says the hospital is getting back to normal with 15 patients suffering the Campylobacter in general wards and 2 in intensive care.
As we anticipated, the numbers of new cases decline and the pressure on the health system decline. So hospital pretty much back to business as usual.
While it may be business as usual at the hospital, one Red Cross worker told me they're still finding elderly people in particular holed up in their homes, dehydrated and in desperate need of drinking water. Another told of finding families of 6 where 5 people are still very ill and bedridden. The workers we spoke to say there is a need for more people on the ground to check more houses. They say the people they are seeing are grateful for the visit and supplies such as bottled water and nappies. Health Minister Jonathan Coleman visited Havelock North today and says the incidence of new cases is tapering off.
The medical staff have dealt pretty well with what's obviously been a challenging situation, but the focus now moves to the terms of the inquiry, and Cabinet will be considering those on Monday. In terms of where we go from here, that is the main focus.
Minister, have you spoken to the Red Cross workers that are going around the homes here?
Haven't had a chance to. We've been on the ground for a couple of hours here, but I understand they've been doing a great job.
Well, I've spoken to them and they're saying that they're encountering people in desperate situations, particularly the elderly people who don't have any water and who are holed up in their homes. So you're focusing on the investigation, but it appears there's still people out there that are struggling.
Well, we've got to make sure that people are getting water and the medical care that they need. The information I've had from the medical professionals working here in Havelock North is that people are getting that assistance. But look, if there are issues that haven't been addressed, Red Cross just need to raise those with the DHB and we'll make sure that they're actively, dealt with.
Hastings Mayor Lawrence Yule says tests on a tanker from Hastings, thought to be contaminated, has come back clear.
So there was never any contamination in the tanker, and as with these tests, it was simply a false positive. So we took a precautionary move and chlorinated the whole of the Hastings supply and asked people to boil water. We're delighted to say, though, there was never anything in the water or in that tanker. There's still contamination in the bore, I think, but the network remains clear.
Lawrence Yule says Havelock North residents need to keep boiling their water until at least next Friday. Meanwhile, Coroner Peter Ryan has opened an investigation into the death of an 89-year-old Hawke's Bay woman to ascertain, as far as possible, whether a Campylobacter infection contributed to her death. In Hawke's Bay, for Checkpoint, this is Peter Fowler.
With 4,100 people having been made sick, the Hawke's Bay DHB is saying some people may develop a serious disorder called Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS, in which the body's immune system attacks part of its nervous system. Although the incidence of GBS is low, it's often associated with earlier exposure to Campylobacter. Kerry McIntosh is in Hastings Memorial Hospital with GBS, but she got seriously unwell from Campylobacter in July.
I've had leptospirosis 10 years ago, so I know what serious illness feels like, and this was horrific. So that first course of antibiotics, I finished it, and the next day, away we go again. It just came back at me with a vengeance, and I had to go back for another course of antibiotics, and I reported at that time that my fingers were numb, my eyesight was not right, and my feet were numb.
That's Kerry herself speaking to us via Skype from her hospital bed. She's so angry about her situation and about a major Campylobacter outbreak in exactly the same area a month after she became unwell that she set up a Facebook page, Have Your Say Hawke's Bay, for people to share their experiences. At first, she thought she had food poisoning from a dodgy pie, but when that was eliminated and when she learned her Campylobacter was from a non-food related source, she became interested in earlier E. coli contaminations in the Tamata bore where Havelock North gets its drinking water. She repeatedly asked the local council for water testing results and were told they weren't available. Kerry, do you know how you got Campylobacter?
No, apart from the fact that I live right on ground zero there.
Now, 6 weeks after she first became unwell, Kerry, as you can see if you're watching, is in hospital, and that's where we spoke to her earlier.
Well, I've been diagnosed with what is called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a complication of Campylobacter. It's relatively rare, but the hospital, I'm the first case, and the hospital are expecting to see quite a few more, so I've created a bit of interest up here. So I have my vision, which I rely on quite heavily for work, is quite blurry, and it's double, and I need these. I accidentally bought these reading glasses, which are super strength things, and years ago picked up the wrong thing, and I remembered them. I can't live without these now, and I can't walk. So as of last night, I've lost a lot of the strength and the ability, and apparently what happens with this syndrome is that your body's immune system goes into overdrive if it's been under pressure for a significant amount of pressure, and it turns on itself and attacks the nervous system. So that's what's happening to me right now. So they've got me hooked up to make sure that nothing happens with my lungs and heart, and I'm on immunoglobulin, I think is the name for it, to boost my immune system, which is a blood product. And I've had a lumbar puncture, which was wonderful, and just to test the fluid in my spine for protein, and what else have I had? I've had all sorts of needles, and I've got lines and needles, and yeah.
So this is as a result of Campylobacter that you contracted in July, and that wasn't from a food source.
That's correct.
Do you believe you got it from a water source? And is that what the doctors you are dealing with believe?
Well, yes, because they've ruled out the pie, and I'm not in contact with anything that could possibly. I mean, it's quite fortuitous that weekend was just a busy weekend with computer and sort of paperwork.
And you live in Tamata Road in very close proximity to the bore that we know this contaminated water has come from, and bore 3, which was previously closed because of E. coli contamination.
Correct, yes.
And so how are you feeling as you sit in hospital really unwell?
I'm furious. I'm a bit too ill now to be venting it, but my daughter, I was on Skype, in conversation with both my daughters, and they said, you look a bit insane, Mum. What are you doing? I said, I'm just so angry that I'm normally a very placid person, but I said they've poked the wrong bull here by not just give me the water test results, because I want answers.
Kerry McIntosh, who's in Hastings Memorial Hospital with GBS. Her Facebook page is Have Your Say Hawke's Bay. As New Zealand's Olympic medal tally reached 15 earlier today, a young man from Timaru was also becoming the first male New Zealander to win a field medal at an Olympic Games. Tom Walsh came third in the shot put. Regular listeners will recall his earlier appearances on Checkpoint as he celebrated his selection, looked forward to the Games and told us he was still working part-time as a builder. So as he was in the car leaving the Olympic Stadium, we phoned him.
Hello.
Is that Tom Walsh, Olympic bronze medalist?
Yes, it is.
How are you, Tom? It's John Campbell. Nice to talk to you.
You too, John.
How are you going? Have you that beautiful smile of yours? Has it had a break since you got your medal?
Yeah, it's had a few here and there, but it's a pretty cool feeling for sure, mate, to know that I'm an Olympic bronze medalist.
You were up against formidable opponents. I mean, the winning throw was 22.50. This was a freakishly strong final, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was indeed, mate. There was 6 of us over 21, I think. So really strong competition for sure. Yeah, and Ryan Krasler, who won with 22.50, was pretty ridiculous. So yeah, and of course Joe Kovac's throwing 21 high. It was a pretty good throw as well.
Tom, I was looking back on some stuff. There you are with the Timaru Throwers Club doing a stairs session on YouTube. It's a magic video. It's laugh out loud funny. It's 2012. You know, it's only 4 years ago. So much has happened so fast, hasn't it?
Oh, it has indeed. Really since, World Indoors in Poland, which was only 2.5 years ago, things have really changed for me. And it's been a hell of a ride, and I'm going to be around for a little while yet, so hopefully it'll get a lot better. But, it would be no fun if it was easy.
No. It looked like fun, although I watched you being interviewed by Andrew Mulligan on Sky TV, and you said the job of an athlete is to go with the flow and that you were pushing against it a little bit, that you were forcing yourself or something. Can you explain what you mean?
Yeah, look, it's kind of hard to explain, but I'll give it a good nudge. When you throw well, it's easy and free and you move well. And today I was trying to throw far rather than letting myself throw far. I was pushing the river and rather than letting it flow by itself. It's just one of the throws where I threw pretty close to 22 metres, I think it was. It was right up there where I fouled. Was nice, and what I won, and that could have changed things for the comp, but it didn't, and that's just the way it is.
Tom, where is your bronze medal now? As you speak to us, are you holding it? Are you wearing it? Where is it?
Well, I think my coach has got it. He's holding it, or someone's got it back there in the back of the car. But it is pretty cool, mate. It's taken away by the weight of the thing. There's a bit of weight in it, and it's cool to see the Olympic rings on it and so forth.
It's yours, Tom. You won that.
It is indeed.
Tom Walsh, bronze medalist. New Zealand racked up its biggest ever Olympic medal haul after clinching 5 more in a day. 1 gold, 2 silver, 2 bronze, including Tom's. The last 24 hours saw New Zealand equal its best ever day at the Olympics numerically. Sports reporter Matt Chatterton reports on a terrific Thursday in Rio, or Friday in New Zealand, that took our medal tally to 15, sailing past the 13 medals won at Seoul in 1988 and London in 2012.
4-time world champions and now winners of New Zealand's 4th gold medal of the Rio Games. 49ers sailors Blair Tuke and Peter Burling were already guaranteed the gold heading into their last race, but that didn't stop them from putting a nail in their competitors' coffins with another comprehensive win. The gold tops the silver the flag-bearing duo claimed at the London Olympics. Despite having the title wrapped up before the day began, Tuke says it was a special feeling crossing the line as Olympic champions.
Exhilaration, that was an amazing moment to, although we knew we were going to win a couple of days ago, to finally, put down that race and then stand on the podium. Just now it's a unreal feeling, just really proud and pretty hard to describe really.
Sailing also delivered the 2 silver medals New Zealand won this morning. The women's 470 crew of Joe Allais and Polly Powery came 3rd in their medal race to secure 2nd. Allais and Powery, the defending Olympic champions, didn't have a shot at gold because Great Britain were too far ahead on the points table, but it was still a tight race for silver. Alay says while it's not a gold, she's over the moon with their performance.
It's been an epic week, it's been a hard week. This for me feels like a gold medal. It's the effort we've put in, and I think we came here with the goal of sailing some good races and sailing a good event, and I feel we've done that completely. London came away a bit disappointed with how we'd actually sailed, and so just really happy to come away with this.
Later in the morning, the New Zealand women's 49er FX crew Alex Maloney and Molly Meach claimed the final sailing medal for New Zealand, another silver. The pair started the medal race in 4th position, but were just 1 point behind first place, which was shared by Spain, Brazil and Denmark. A fast start pushed New Zealand into the gold medal spot, and they held it for the majority of the race. However, home course advantage went in Brazil's favour in the latter third, and they crossed the line just a couple of seconds ahead of New Zealand to claim gold. Meach says she was surprised how close the entire regatta was.
I think we were both surprised, happy and a little bit shocked as well, but it was really cool to be in the mix and to come away with the silvers. We're really happy.
New Zealand's first bronze medal of the day was awarded to kayaker Lisa Carrington in the women's K1 500 final. Carrington, who successfully defended her K1 200 Olympic title just 2 days ago, claimed her third medal in dramatic fashion, finishing just 0.04 of a second behind the silver medal winner. Carrington's the first New Zealand woman to ever win 2 medals at a single Olympics. She's also only one of 3 New Zealand women to win 3 Olympic medals, joining Barbara Kendall and Valerie Adams. Carrington says being part of such elite company is remarkable.
I would never have believed that I could win 1 medal, let alone 3. So, I guess I'm just getting greedier.
Shot putter Tom Walsh's bronze medal today takes New Zealand's tally to 15, our highest number of medals won at an Olympics. 4 gold, 8 silver and 3 bronze. For Checkpoint, ko Matt Cheriton-Tine.
You are with Checkpoint on RNZ National, 27 minutes past 5. We have breaking news. In the past few minutes, a report into the contamination of Havelock's North drinking water has been released. We are trying to obtain a copy, but Michael Whittaker from Tomato Mushrooms, I believe, has a copy. Michael, are you on the phone? Michael, are you there?
Hello.
Yeah, hi, Michael. Have you got a copy of this report?
I have. I've just received it now.
Okay, I suspect it's reasonably long and reasonably scientific. And also you are an interested party, so as dispassionately as you are able, can you tell us if the source of the contamination is identified?
It is. It's it's obviously an interim report that they make very clear about, but it has got a paragraph that obviously we're relieved to read, and we think it's pretty succinct in what the likely cause is.
Okay, can you read that out to us? Is there a key paragraph? Can you read that to us?
Yeah, well, the key part is it talks about that the source is consistent with ruminant animals such as cattle, sheep, or deer. It then goes on.
Sorry, Michael, just to interrupt there. Does it name cattle, sheep, and deer?
It does. It says consistent with ruminant source such as cattle, sheep, or deer, and then it goes on to say these genotypes are not consistent with a poultry source, and then followed by isolates from the boar sample most closely related to wild fowl.
Okay, so in fact it's actually not that conclusive, is it? It's consistent with ruminant sources such as cattle, sheep, or deer, and possibly wildfowl. So there are still a lot of suspects, aren't there?
Oh, there is, but I guess from our point of view, it does talk that it is not consistent with poultry, and as a farm, we use chicken manure, so we're pretty relieved to read that, and really the mix of E. coli looks like it's farm runoff. It's what you'd expect to see on any farmland, sheep, cattle, and pukekos and ducks in the creek.
Having said that, it's a year or two since I've been there, but there are no cattle around you, are there? There's a lot of viticulture, there's your mushrooms, there's a piggery not too far away, there's a few sheep up on the hills, but the intensive kind of dairy farming and cattle farming isn't in that direct area, is it?
Oh no, certainly not intensive, but it's a big catchment behind us, and there's a lot of farmland there, so there are cattle and there are all those animals around. So, but it's certainly not pointing to intensive farming, and the report doesn't go there. But it's consistent with what you'd expect on a general farm environment, I think.
Okay, and we had heavy flooding. And of course, this is speculative, but there was heavy flooding, widely reported on because of the snow in the central North Island. But there was a lot of rainfall at the beginning of the month, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was, and it does tie together, the events. But I think is from our perspective, we're just
Has anyone called? So how did you get this report? Has anyone called you and said, prima facie, you're off the hook, or we don't think it's chicken manure, or how did you obtain the report, and what has your conversation been with the Hastings District Council?
Look, it's very limited, and it's obviously it's only just been released, and we're still working through what the implications are, and try not to jump to too many conclusions.
Okay.
This is going to be a long process.
Yeah, hell yes. Michael Whitaker from Tomato Mushrooms. Thank you so much, Michael. We've just managed to obtain Lawrence Yule, who was the mayor. Mayor Yule, thank you for joining us. What does the report tell us?
Well, I've only just seen it myself, but I think what it does show, and there's a critical part here that says these genotypes are not consistent with a poultry source. So everybody that's been thinking this is part of tomato mushrooms because they use chicken manure as part of the composting thing, I don't think you can say that anymore. This field is wide open now in terms of what is the cause. And they're saying in the report I've seen that it's most likely to be related to ruminants, which are certainly not chickens.
Right. Well, ruminants are animals that chew grass, right? So
they are.
So in your neighbourhood, in that neighbourhood, and I guess, and this goes back to a bigger issue, and it's really hard to pin down. In that neighbourhood, the sort of animals that are above the underground aquifers are what? Cattle and sheep mostly, aren't they?
Cattle and sheep. Yep, they are.
And so is it, I mean, no one knows, right? But is it possible that the very heavy rain that was, 2 weekends ago, 2 or 3 weekends?
Correct. 2
yeah,
weekends
that's right,
ago.
2 weekends ago, has somehow washed this stuff into the water supply?
It is. It looks. I mean, it's very hard to explain it in any other way. I mean, I've been a farmer. I'm an engineer. It looks likely, based on, and they're going to put all this together, but it looks likely that somehow that has occurred. Yes.
Can we go back to the conversation that we were having yesterday, and you rightly said, hey, this is regional council stuff, it's not district council stuff, it's not your council, it's other councils, it's the Central Hawke's Bay and the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. But that Tuki River and the overflow of sewerage that is coming in from Waipawa and Waipukaro, further up the river and running down towards Havelock North, is it possible for that stuff to get into the aquifers? Does anyone know the answer to that question?
I don't think they know the answer to it, but I'll tell you why I think that is highly unlikely. What we've found here, and it's been confirmed today, is that there is Campylobacter in the bores. Now, Campylobacter generally comes from either food or animal sources, and you would only get it from sewage if the population that is excreting the sewage has Campylobacter. So the Central Hawke's Bay and population does not, as I'm aware, have Campylobacter. So it is highly unlikely, even if sewage was on the river, that the Campylobacter would have come from that sewage.
Gosh, this is a mystery, isn't it?
It is a mystery, yes.
And so it seems on the face of it that chicken manure, which was being used in tomato mushrooms, which is directly above or adjacent to the aquifers, has been eliminated. But if this was a game of Cluedo, and I'm sorry, I'm not being glib because people are terribly unwell, but there's still a number of suspects yet to be eliminated, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is I don't think we can rule anything in or out.
it says here that the genotypes are not consistent with poultry. And that sort of widens the field, but every single option will be considered as part of this, and we've got staff as we speak, and for the last few days trying to understand how this could have happened and what is the source.
Lawrence Yuill, who is the Mayor, of course, thank you so much for joining us live with that breaking news over the phone. We really appreciate it. It is 5:35. We've thrown the program out of kilter a little bit because of those two unexpected live interviews. We will sort ourselves out. Nona's here to do business, but first, Katrina Batten with RNZ Headlines.
The Hawke's Bay District Health Board is warning of the potential for people who've suffered from gastric illness to suffer unusual complications. More than 4,000 people have been reported ill because of Havelock North's water supply being contaminated with Campylobacter, and 17 remain in hospital. The DHB says there is a possibility a few people could develop the rare disorder Guillain-Barré syndrome. The symptoms include weakening muscles and sometimes complete paralysis. The DHB says there could be a few cases of reactive arthritis as well. A national day to commemorate the battles of the New Zealand Wars 150 years ago has been approved by the government. The Deputy Prime Minister, Bill English, made the announcement at Tūranga Waiwai Marae today. He says a process is in place to find a date. The police say they botched their handling of an emergency call from a Kaitaia woman who feared a home invasion after being followed by a car after she left work on Saturday night. She called 111 when she got home and sat up all night with her two children waiting for a patrol car. The police in the far north have apologised, saying their response did not meet the unusual standard of putting victims first. The Building and Housing Minister, Nick Smith, says the government is tightening the requirements for ensuring steel mesh is up to standard. The government is calling for submissions on proposed changes to the building code to strengthen the mesh. It's the most successful day in Olympic history for the New Zealand team with 5 medals. The sailors Peter Burling and Blair Tuke officially won gold in the 49er class, while the women's 470 and 49er crews both claimed silvers. Shot putter Tom Walsh and kayaker Lisa Carrington each got bronzes. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6 with more news, sport and weather.
Thank you so much, Katrina. Let's turn to business now. Nona is seated beside me in the studio. New data, Nona, shows 23 consecutive months of record rises and overseas visitor numbers came to a halt in July, which means the overseas visitors who didn't come were really prescient because the weather was crap.
Yeah, apparently they must have known.
They must have known in advance.
I guess, but never mind. Those are the people who arrive permanently, on visas. The ones who come for a holiday, that didn't change.
Oh,
in fact,
right.
No, those numbers continued to flourish. In fact, that was the highest level ever in July. So that was the highest ever for a July. Anyways, we hit a record 3.34 million for the year. That's up 11% on the year earlier.
So this is like climate change. The records just keep going up and up and up every month, don't they?
Apparently people don't realise we have winter here. Or they like winter. Yeah, they like it. Well, whatever. I did read, though, that there is concern that if we continue with this momentum, when we get to those peak seasons, when summer arrives, we're going to have a hard time finding accommodation for all our guests.
Yes, we've been talking about that earlier. So, in fact, there's going to be a campaign to try and get more people to come in the shoulder and low seasons and try and take the pressure off peak.
Perhaps this is an indication that's working, that strategy. Yeah. So anyways, it doesn't matter, though, even though the numbers dipped a little bit. In fact, economists say that immigration remains robust, so we're not really moving the other direction. It's simply that Australia is starting to look a little bit more attractive to people when they're choosing where they might want to go. And so that's part of it, that Australia is now back on the flavour of the month.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah. Okay, what are the markets? How did the markets end the week, Nona?
Right, well, let's not forget. You'll be so happy to hear this, John. The NZX 50 hit another record high today. Yes, indeed. Up more than 0.25% to a new record high. Yep, 7,405. That's up 20 points. And the New Zealand dollar, it held steady even though that US dollar is back on the rise again. Yeah, it slipped only a little bit against the US dollar as the Fed start to talk up to, interest rate hikes once more to 72.6 US cents, 95 Australian and 55.3 British pence.
Thanks, Nona. Have a wonderful weekend.
And you.
A Kaitaia woman is living in fear after she was followed at night by a car and police failed to respond to her 111 call. She says she sat up all night with a softball bat, fearing a home invasion and waiting for a patrol car that she was expecting, hoping for, but that never came. The woman's too afraid to give her name in case her stalker finds her, but she told her story today to our Northland reporter, Lois Williams.
The woman says that last Saturday night she finished work just after 10 and called into a Kaitaia service station for petrol. As she left, she noticed a car that had been sitting at the curb pulling out after her. At first she thought nothing of it, but then it dawned on her she was being followed.
I got more and more worried with what was going on. I sped up, it kept up with me, I slowed down, it would slow down. It could have overtaken me, but it didn't.
The woman lives on a rural property some distance from Kaitaia with her 2 teenagers. She might have driven back towards the police station, she says, if it was staffed at night, but it's not. And so she made a snap decision to lead her pursuer away from her home.
I guess I thought, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe it's not. But out of panic, I made the decision to not turn down my road and go home, to continue driving.
Why didn't you want to go home?
One, I didn't want whoever it was to know where I lived, and also my children were at home. I want to protect them.
And from that point, the chase was on. The woman turned down a deserted gravel road in a bid to shake her stalker.
If it's nothing to be concerned about, it's going to go straight past. But it followed me, and that's when panic, really set in. And so basically I just was like, I've got to lose this vehicle somehow. I've got to get away.
The woman says she planted her foot on the gas and got far enough ahead of her pursuer to turn onto a side road without being spotted, as far as she could tell. She sped home, taking the back roads, stumbled inside and told her frightened children what had happened. Then she locked the doors and windows, turned off all the lights, armed herself with a softball bat and called 111.
They asked for my details, name, address, contact number, what had happened, where I was. There was a light, looked like it was down on the road towards the end of the drive, and it sounded like someone walking down. Told them all this stuff, and she said that they would get a unit, do their best to get a unit to check the property, make sure the property was secured, make sure everything was okay, and they never arrived.
The woman says she sat up all night, unable to sleep, fearing a home invasion. And in the morning, she found someone had written the words, "Follow me," in dust on the rear window of her car. She hasn't slept much since then, and she still hasn't heard from the police more than 5 days later.
I thought they would have contacted me by now, made some attempt, but there's nothing. Wherever the fault lies, whoever got this so wrong, no one should have to go through that. And they need to look at their systems and rectify it, get it sorted. At the end of the day, they could have been dealing with something a whole lot worse.
Northland Police are reviewing what happened, and they're investigating the possibility that after the woman's 111 call, the job details were not passed on to Kaitaia staff. For Checkpoint, Lois Williams.
Checkpoint wanted to speak to police about this incident. They declined, but the acting area commander of Far North Police, Ricky Fuel, issued a statement in which he cited a disappointing series of communication breakdowns. He says it appears the woman's initial call wasn't dispatched to local staff so they could attend, and a further communication breakdown meant the victim hadn't been contacted by police since her concerns were raised. Very similar issues to the ones we were discussing on Checkpoint on Wednesday night. Ricky Fuel says police have attempted to contact the victim this afternoon and want to meet her to discuss the matter, and he says on this occasion the police's response has fallen short. If you live in Kaitaia or anywhere near there in the Far North and have dialed 111, let us know what kind of experience you've had in terms of response time. You can email us checkpoint@radionz.co.nz or text 21801. Pictures of a dazed and bloodied Syrian boy rescued from a destroyed building in Aleppo after an airstrike have sparked outrage and become the latest symbol of the devastating conflict which continues to just tear that country apart. Images of 5-year-old Omran Daknish sitting in an ambulance were released by activists. They've gone viral. The UN Special Envoy has once again condemned all sides in the conflict, but he's warning an announcement by Russia that its forces will observe a 48-hour ceasefire to allow aid is desperately needed. The BBC's Lise Doucette with this report.
Another airstrike on a home in East Aleppo. Russian or Syrian warplanes attack this rebel-held area almost every day now. This time, a little boy is rescued from the rubble. Emergency teams rush him into an ambulance. Then, for a moment, he sits, in silence, in shock, on his own. When you're only 5 years old, it's hard to grasp what's woken you up in the middle of the night. Film provided by activists in Aleppo shot round the world, striking a chord with a world grown weary of Syria's plight. Aleppo, Syria's second city, has been at war since Omran was born. Now it's the focus of intense fighting. Despite pleas for a ceasefire to allow aid to reach millions across Syria trapped by this violence. In Geneva today, a UN envoy known for his patience announced he'd had enough.
Not one single convoy in 1 month has reached any of the humanitarian besieged areas.
Within hours, Russia's offer, a 48-hour truce in Aleppo. Mr. de Mistura told the BBC what must happen next.
For the Americans, they too should be saying yes to a humanitarian pause for Aleppo for 48 hours. Then, I think Omran's image would have helped at least to stop the carnage for the time being in Aleppo.
Omran was treated by Dr. Mohammed. He tells us he's seen much worse.
We need to tell all the world about these thousands of stories, maybe more worse from that of Omran.
Today, Omran's plight symbolizes the suffering of Syria. He's focused many minds for the moment. What Syria needs is an end to a terribly tangled war, and that is still nowhere in sight.
That's the BBC's Lise Doucette. The government is making changes to the testing of steel reinforcing mesh after quality problems were revealed by RNZ News. The Building and Housing Minister Nick Smith is proposing to increase the number of tests required, clarify exactly how they're done and have them done by internationally accredited testing laboratories. But he told our Deputy Political Editor Chris Bramwell the proposed changes are not an admission that the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment is failing as the regulator.
It's about responding to issues as they arise. We've had steel mesh used in New Zealand for many decades. We toughened the standard after the Christchurch earthquakes to improve the resilience of buildings. When a relatively small number of cases came forward, that the new requirements with respect to the strength of the steel when subject to large displacement caused issues. The Commerce Commission is taking it up with those that have failed, and equally at the same time the government is moving to tighten up the testing to ensure that when there are incidents of this sort, we ensure that our quality systems around the building code are robust.
So do you still maintain that MB, as the regulator, was fully and adequately across this in the years since the Christchurch earthquake?
Well, there are tens of thousands of products that are used in our building systems. And so my expectations of the ministry is that when there are issues with specific products, that they're properly investigated and that we respond appropriately. The building sector is going through a boom that will put extra pressure on the quality assurance systems. That's why the government's putting more money into MB's work in this area. There's actually over 30 areas where we are tightening the standards to ensure that we get the quality of homes, but we also make sure that we're supporting the growth and the quality as well.
Do you think these proposed changes will be enough to restore confidence in steel mesh?
I don't get a broad feeling from the sector that there is a loss of confidence. What there is huge pressure around the pace of growth, an increased amount of imported material, and as a consequence, an increased amount of effort that the industry and government needs to put in to ensure that our building code and standards are complied with.
So is there evidence of similar gaps and flaws with other building materials?
The building sector is one where there are tens of thousands of products. Those products are constantly changing. Primary responsibility is that those that are manufacturing those products do what they say they do and comply with the building code.
What I am doing is wanting to strengthen those quality assurance systems so that whether it be the engineer, whether it be the builder, or whether it be the homeowner, they can have greater degrees of confidence that the products that they are using match up to the standards that are required.
That's Nick Smith talking to Chris Bramwell. Tomorrow night, the eccentrically convoluted All Blacks season reboots itself. Having played 3 games against Wales in June, they now begin the Investec Rugby Championship. Australia, South Africa, Argentina and New Zealand. Game 1 is in Sydney tomorrow against the Wallabies, also for the Bledisloe Cup. The last time the All Blacks and Australia played each other was the World Cup final last year. Since then, the All Blacks have beaten Wales 3 times. Australia have lost to England 3 times. So in the preamble to tomorrow night's match, there's been an enormous amount of nonsense spoken about who the pressure is on more, the All Blacks because they haven't lost a game since this fixture last year, or the Wallabies because they desperately need to start winning. I discussed this with the Sydney Morning Herald's excellent rugby writer Georgina Robinson.
Yeah, the preamble's been pretty good, but look, we've just hosted Eddie Jones in England, 2 months ago. So, I mean, Steve Hansen and Michael Cheika kind of, half-heartedly going at it. It's been nothing compared to the sideshow we watched in England, to be quite honest. And I actually think Steve Hansen, he got a bit tired of it yesterday here in Sydney, and he just said, look, in all honesty, folks, we wouldn't have the win record we have if we didn't respect the opposition. And I actually think that was probably, the truest thing spoken in the entire week of jockeying. That there's no lack of respect. The only reason we're as good as we are is because we take every single team we play deadly seriously.
That fixture last year in Sydney, where Australia really beat the All Blacks pretty comfortably, is going to be playing in the minds of both teams, isn't it?
I don't think it'll be playing in the minds of the Wallabies, to be honest. I don't think one victory, in one battle, means anything to these Wallabies. I think what people do actually recognise is that every time the All Blacks have come over here, and I think the All Blacks themselves recognise this, in this first Sydney test, I'm not sure what it is, but occasionally it looks like they can be caught. Maybe they're just kind of winding up for a pretty gruelling season ahead. But teams can sort of get them, and I think that's why the Wallabies, got very close once, won once, and I actually think the All Blacks know a couple of things. They know they've lost a lot of their once-in-a-generation players.
Yep.
And they have to form a new leadership group and really enable those guys to lead. And they also know that that's happened before. So what have they done? They've changed their hotel, they've changed their location, they've changed their training ground. They're here for a week, not a few days. And I think that's a real recognition of the fact that, occasionally when we come over to Sydney, maybe we're just a bit slow off the mark, and it won't happen again.
Georgina, can we talk about the bigger picture? And I'm asking this question as one rugby fan to another, but there's real pressure on rugby in Australia, isn't there? Because they need crowds and they need television audiences. And in Australia, to get crowds and television audiences, you have to win. So at what stage is the public going to get exasperated with a Wallaby side that has enormous potential that it's not fulfilling? And at what stage is that kind of damage starting to become irreparable?
Yeah, it's Australian rugby, has a bit of a boom-bust cycle that I think, every administrator and every coach is desperate to wean them off. From a corporate standpoint, I think there is still a glow from the World Cup performance. That was a really stunning sort of overachievement by the Wallabies, in some regards. They had a very new coach and, they went all the way to a World Cup final with some amazing performances along the way that showcased a lot of different skills. Now, the England series, was a massive come down, but I do think that no matter what happens on Saturday, no matter what happens, actually, for most of the rest of the season, there will be a lot of questions asked if the season doesn't go well. But at no point will people wonder if Michael Cheika is the right coach. I think that people recognise we have the best coach, and so he needs the time to really pull the high performance program up to standard. something the New Zealanders got right many years ago, and he just needs the right support. And then he needs time, and probably a World Cup cycle. And I think for once, Australians are brutal. We kind of eat our own. We've disposed of a number of coaches over the years. We disposed of Eddie Jones, and look what he's done for England and is doing for England. So I think actually this might be the one point where we might actually, go the distance with someone and stick with them.
Georgina Robinson, the game's in Sydney tomorrow night. After a long campaign by Māori, the government has agreed to establish a commemoration day for the New Zealand Wars. The Deputy Prime Minister Bill English and Maggie Barry, the Minister of Conservation, were handing back land titles today, and with it they announced there will be a National Day of Remembrance for the New Zealand Wars. Te Manu Kōrehi reporter Shannon Haunui-Thompson was there.
Children from local schools in the Waikato area were witness to Waikato Tainui and the Kingitanga being gifted back the land titles to two significant sites. In 1863, one of the bloodiest battles between Māori and colonial soldiers was at Rangiriri Pā. It was the start of a series of battles in the Waikato region, which led to over 1 million acres of land being confiscated. Rahui Papa of Waikato Tainui says the iwi have been waiting ever since to get their land back, so today is a great day.
Beautiful day to commemorate 152 years of mamae, of hurt that has been resolved today by the repatriation of the Rangiriri site and the Te Whioro Redoubt under the korowai of the Kingitanga and into the hands and guardianship of the people.
Not only was Rangiriri Pā and Te Whioro's Redoubt Historical Reserve given back to the iwi, it came with a promise to hold a national day of commemoration. The Deputy Prime Minister, Bill English, acknowledged the Kingitanga for their support in advocating for a New Zealand Wars Commemoration Day and says it's time to commemorate the country's own war and those who died.
There's no doubt that at Rangiriri, ordinary people lost their lives fighting for principle in just the same way as New Zealand soldiers lost their lives fighting in battlefields on the other side of the world.
Minister of Conservation Maggie Barry called the Battle of Rangiriri a deeply regrettable time in our history, but says now the interest in commemorating the New Zealand Wars has never been greater.
And we will find a day that will suit everyone, because it is too important not to have a special day, and we will work together in a spirit of cooperation and collaboration to find a suitable time. It is important to us as a nation, at least as important as our World War I commemorations, if not more so.
She says the government will work in a cooperative way to find an appropriate day which suits everyone. Rahui Papa says iwi have already met and discussed a commemoration day.
So iwi around the motu have met with Te Rurua, with the Minister for Māori Development to start discussing things about how it might play out. And then there will be some follow-up hui to solidify a date, to see what sort of an entity can be put in place to cater for all of the battle sites and the invasion sites across the country.
I tūranga wāwai marae mo te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Shannon Haunui-Thompson tēnei.
It's about a minute and a half until 6. Shannon works for Te Manu Kōrehi along with Mihi Narangi Forbes. It's a really excellent team. You can find their work on Radio New Zealand's fantastic website. You can also find the work of Radio New Zealand International, who have their own page. The website has recently been relaunched. We know most of you have gone and had a look at it, and we're getting lots of great feedback on it. But on behalf of the people who work very hard to make it so good, do give it a go, and you will find the work of the Radio New Zealand news team, Checkpoint, Morning Report, Rurals, the Gallery, Te Manu Kōrehi and Radio New Zealand International, all available there. New Zealand and the Pacific covered in depth. Coming up at 6 o'clock, or after Katrina brings us the latest in RNZ News. In the last half hour, newly released tests show the Campylobacter infection that has swept through Havelock North's water supply is most likely to have started with ruminants. And the suspects, of course, are cattle, sheep or deer in that region. New Zealand racks up its biggest ever Olympic medal haul after clinching 5 more in a day. 1 gold, 2 silver and 2 bronze. Wellington's cable car is reopened after a 2-month-long, $5 million refurbishment, and a former Olympian and his son and their pet lamb. Kia ora everyone, you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. It's Friday night, it's 6 o'clock. I've already told you what's coming up. The theme has been faded magnificently by Jeremy, so it leaves me nothing more to do than introduce Katrina Batten with RNZ News.
Thank you, John. Ngā mihi nui, good evening. The Mayor of the Hastings district says it seems the most likely cause of the contamination of Havelock North's water is faeces from livestock getting into the supply during floods 2 weeks ago. Preliminary results show ruminants are the most likely source of the Campylobacter bacteria. A report from the research agency Environmental Science and Research says wildfowl has not been eliminated as a source, but poultry is unlikely. It says more analysis will be carried out next week before a final assessment can be made. But the Mayor, Lawrence Yule, says the faeces of cattle and sheep being washed into the water supply during the flooding is the most likely source of the problem.
It's very hard to explain it in any other way. I mean, you know, I've been a farmer, I'm an engineer. It looks likely, based on, and they're going to put all this together, but it looks likely that somehow that has occurred, yes.
The Mayor of the Hastings district, Lawrence Yule. Some banks are reviewing their KiwiSaver investment policies after it was revealed they were putting customers' money into cluster bomb, landmine and tobacco manufacturers. ANZ, BNZ, Westpac, Grosvenor, AMP and ASB are all investing in at least some of the manufacturing companies, which are banned from government investment lists, Rowan Quinn reports.
Most of the banks say they've had queries about the investing from worried customers or have fielded comments on social media. AMP says it's been moving away from investments prohibited for government agencies since 2014 and will be fully out by the end of this year. ASB says it's also been reviewing its policies for some time, and Westpac and ANZ say they are now looking into theirs. BNZ says it has no plans to review its policy and has not had a notable number of calls about its investments. This is Rowan Quinn.
Australia's banking sector has suffered a blow. The credit agency Moody's has revised its outlook for Australia's banks to negative. Here's the ABC's Rebecca Hyam.
Moody's has flagged a more challenging operating environment for the banking industry over the rest of the year and has downgraded the major banks' outlooks from stable to negative. It's warning that profit growth at the big four lenders, Commonwealth Bank, Westpac, National Australia Bank and ANZ, could deteriorate amid the current environment of low interest rates, stalling wages growth, rising household debt and increased competition in the banking industry. The ratings agency also says asset quality may decline and has highlighted concerns about rising problem loans in the resources sector.
Rebecca Hyam. A national day to commemorate the battles of the New Zealand Wars 150 years ago has been approved by the government. The Deputy Prime Minister, Bill English, made the announcement at Tūrangawaewae Marae today at a ceremony to return the title and deeds for the Rangiriri battle site to Waikato Tainui. The land was confiscated after the battle in 1863. Bill English says a commemoration day will give recognition to ordinary people who lost their lives fighting for principle in this country in the same way New Zealand soldiers did on the battlefields of Europe. Meanwhile, Waikato Tainui says 152 years of hurt has been resolved today with the return of land at Rangiriri. A spokesperson, Rahui Papa, says it means the iwi is now over the hurt and is heading towards a strong relationship with the government.
As land was taken, land was returned today outside of a settlement process, but it's the right thing to do because it's still open to each and every person in this country.
Rahui Papa says the iwi is looking forward to the New Zealand Wars being commemorated nationally and taught in schools. The Republican presidential candidate, Donald Trump, appears to be changing his style as he seeks to reset his campaign. In his latest speech, he has expressed regret for remarks that he says may have caused personal pain. Mr. Trump has forced a barrage of criticism for his tough talk and brash style, particularly over his attack on the family of a fallen Muslim soldier this month. He says sometimes his mouth runs away on him.
Sometimes, in the heat of debate and speaking on a multitude of issues, you don't choose the right words or you say the wrong thing. I have done that, and believe it or not, I regret it.
Donald Trump, who's trailing his rival Hillary Clinton in the polls, has tried to reset his campaign with a shake-up of senior campaign staff. The Irish Olympic official arrested in Rio in connection with illegal ticket sales has been discharged from hospital and taken to a police station for questioning. Pat Hickey, who's 71, is the president of the European Olympic Committee. He was arrested yesterday as part of an inquiry into Olympic ticket scalping. After his arrest, he requested medical attention. In sport, the New Zealand team has had its most successful day at the Olympics, winning 5 medals at Rio. The shot putter Tom Walsh won bronze this afternoon to become the first New Zealand man to win a medal in an Olympic field event. The 24-year-old says he's stoked with his performance in the final, but can't shake off some disappointment about not winning gold. Earlier in the morning, the kayaker Lisa Carrington won bronze in her K1 500-metre race, and the women's 470 and 49er sailing crews both claimed silvers. New Zealand's flag bearers Peter Burling and Blair Tuke officially claimed gold in the men's 49er class. Meanwhile, the Jamaican sprinter Usain Bolt has won his 8th gold medal after blitzing the field in the men's 200-metre race. Bolt, who ran the final in 19.78 seconds, is the first man to win the 200-metre event at 3 Olympics in a row. The Black Caps coach Mike Hesson says his team is relishing the chance to make history in the Test series starting tonight against South Africa. New Zealand has never won a series against the Proteas, but confidence high after 2 impressive victories over Zimbabwe. Hesson says the team is motivated by the prospect of breaking new ground.
South Africa is a country that we've never won a Test series against, so whether it's 2 tests or 5 tests, we've had a lot of history and it's something we haven't been able to achieve. So for this side, it's something that if we keep improving, then hopefully we're going to give ourselves a chance.
Mike Hesson. The first test begins at 8 o'clock tonight. That's the news.
Can I invite the candidates up on stage?
The third election of the Auckland Council. National politics is playing a bigger hand.
We're loosely aligned with the National Party.
Auckland just needs us.
Who'll be mayor and who will vote?
There hasn't been much of a campaign yet.
Is it about transformation or cost cutting?
Who knows what will happen?
I'm Todd Niall, and Insight investigates just after the 8 o'clock news on Sunday morning with Wallace Chapman on RNZ National.
Met service weather to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula, fine spells and the odd shower in the east. In the west from Waikato to Wellington, including Bay of Plenty in the central high country, fine. Gisborne to Wairarapa, cloudy periods with isolated light showers, clearing in Wairarapa tomorrow. Bulla, Nelson, Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland, mostly fine, but a few areas of low cloud or fog in the morning and isolated showers for Nelson and Bulla tomorrow. A chance of an afternoon shower tomorrow for Otago and Southland. Westland and Fiordland, cloudy periods, a few light showers south of Hokitika, turning to rain tomorrow, and the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods. It's just gone 6:08.
Thank you, Katrina. Have a lovely weekend.
You too.
Cheers. New test results show the Campylobacter infection that has swept through Havelock North is most likely to have started with a ruminant, cattle, sheep or deer. It's thought more than 4,000 people have now caught the gastric illness in what is New Zealand's worst ever waterborne disease outbreak. It might also have killed at least one person after test results confirmed an elderly woman who died last week had contracted Campylobacter. The interim ESR report released by the Hastings District Council in the last hour does not totally exclude any source of contamination at this stage, but the Hastings District Mayor Lawrence Ewell told us it does say the contamination is unlikely to be from chicken manure.
Everybody that's been thinking this is part of tomato mushrooms because they use chicken manure as part of the composting thing, I don't think you can say that anymore. This field is wide open now in terms of what is the cause. And They're saying in the report I've seen that it's most likely to be related to ruminants, which are certainly not chickens.
I mean, no one knows, right? But is it possible that the very heavy rain that was, 2 weekends ago? 2 or 3 weekends?
Correct.
Yeah, that's right, 2 weekends ago, has somehow washed this stuff into the water supply?
It is. It looks. I mean, it's very hard to explain it in any other way. I mean, you know, I've been a farmer. I'm an engineer. It looks likely, based on, and they're going to put all this together, but it looks likely that somehow that has occurred. Yes.
That was Lawrence Yule talking to us immediately after he received the report about 40 minutes ago. The Havelock North water contamination crisis has councils around the country checking the same thing won't happen there. Christchurch City councillors will next week consider a report on the risks involved in not putting chlorine in the city's water supply, and Hutt City Council, which also goes without chlorine, is watching the situation carefully. Colin Young reports.
Having fantastic tasting water straight out of the tap without the taint of chlorine has long been a matter of pride for the citizens of Christchurch and Lower Hutt. But the crisis in Havelock North is giving many pause for thought on whether preserving the taste is worth the risk of potentially fatal illnesses. The man in charge of drinking water quality for the Christchurch City Council, John Mackey, is preparing a report on the pros and cons of chlorinating the city's water that comes from natural aquifers deep underground.
If the risk that you see in Hawke's Bay is not tolerable in Christchurch, then we need to have that discussion. You know, you've heard the comments about the Hawke's Bay being pristine water sources, and can there be anything as a guaranteed pristine source? And I think we're seeing that the risk is still there, however small, unless we have that disinfection.
Because none of the city's water is treated, it's tested every day for nasties such as E. coli. Last year, just 0.2% of the samples taken showed up any sign of E. coli and nobody got sick. But John Mackey says the 24-hour time lag between when samples are taken and when they can be passed as safe means there will always be a risk of contamination.
It takes time to get the test results. You've got to culture the bugs overnight, so it takes time. It's not something you can speed up, like ask the bugs to go faster. It takes 24 hours to get a result, and that's just a method of testing for E. coli.
Towns in the neighbouring Selwyn district haven't been so lucky, including 46 cases of gastroenteritis in Sprinkston in 2008 and over 100 in Darfield 3 years ago. Both were related to boars being contaminated by livestock. The Canterbury Medical Officer of Health, Alistair Humphrey, says intensive dairy farming makes these sorts of incidents more likely.
What we see across the region is increasing nitrates. Most of that increase is in shallow bores. We occasionally and increasingly are seeing more nitrates in deeper bores. At this point in time, we have not seen nitrates in the deep aquifers underneath Christchurch.
But Alistair Humphrey says there's no room for complacency.
We have to make sure we do not have runoff, we do not produce too much nitrate from the farms that surround Christchurch, because if we do, that nitrate will eventually work its way down into the deep aquifers.
The other major population centre that doesn't put chlorine in its water is Lower Hutt, where pristine water comes from an aquifer deep below the city. Hutt City Council's agency in charge of water is Wellington Water. Its spokesperson, Alex Van Parsen, says any decision on chlorinating the water would be up to the city councillors.
I'm sure that they, along with us, will be watching closely to see the outcome of any investigations and recommendations that come from Havelock North. But in the meantime, we are monitoring closely the quality testing, and we are confident the supply is safe.
Alex Van Parsen says they test Lower Hutt's drinking water every second day, and most years get back just 3 to 10 results that are positive for E. coli. He says there will always be a trade-off to make between having great tasting water and ensuring it's 100% safe. For Checkpoint, ko Conan Young tēnei.
Let's turn to sport. New Zealand has racked up its biggest ever Olympic medal haul after clinching 5 more today. Overnight, 1 gold, 2 silver, 2 bronze. Peter Burling and Blair Tuke, of course, won the 49ers race this morning. They'd already really claimed the golds by winning, doing so well early on. Alex Maloney and Molly Meach took silver in the 49er FX. Jo Alei and Polly Powery also won silver in the women's 470 class. Lisa Carrington earlier took bronze in the K1 500 to go with her gold earlier in the 100. And this afternoon, Tom Walsh came third in the shot put and became the first New Zealand athlete to win a fields medal. Male athlete, sorry. Valerie has been doing it for a while. A short time ago, I spoke to our sports reporter in Rio, Barry Guy, and asked him about our team's overall performance.
They started a bit slowly, but in recent days, the medals have started to come. High Performance Sport New Zealand had targeted 14 in total, and we've reached that now, and there's still a possibility of another couple to go. I know some organisations around the world earlier in the year had predicted that would be up in the 20s, and I suppose if everything had gone New Zealand's way, then that was an outside chance. But I would say that it's been a successful game for New Zealand. Perhaps another couple of gold medals would have really tipped it off and been made it perhaps a great Olympic Games for New Zealand. But I think generally it's pretty good. I'd give it a B.
What about the event itself? Because poor old Rio has copped its fair share of criticism. How has it been being there? Has it felt successful as a big picture event?
No, I'm sure people watching back in New Zealand would have seen the venues, and they look impressive, and the competition's been very good. But here, behind the scenes, it has been a bit lax. Not everything was ready. Organisationally, things have been a bit of an issue, transport and security and those sorts of things. I spoke to Barry Meister, who's an IOC member from New Zealand, and he said they're reasonably happy with this, considering, it is South America. It was a new challenge for the IOC. And, they, I think, at the end of it will be quite happy. But as far as the number of games I've been to, this would be the one that seemed to be the least prepared for this Games.
Barry, when you're an old man and you look back, what are the stories you'll remember? Will it be Usain Bolt doing it again for the third consecutive Olympics, or is there something else that has really grabbed you and made you think that was wonderful?
I'm already an old man, John, and Usain Bolt. I've seen him at 3 Olympics now, and he's just outstanding. He won the 200 metres tonight. There are some things, I had sort of a few pet sports that I like and I want to see do well, and Val, of course, was one of them, and there was immediate disappointment straight after that, but she was just wonderful afterwards. I had a team spot for the men's track cycling team, and they were picked by Great Britain, who produced a world record there, and I really wanted those guys, after some World Championship success, to get an Olympic gold as well. The thing that I keep seeing, though, is the performances of Great Britain at these Olympics, and they've had another outstanding Games. I think they're second on the table. They're probably going to finish second on the table behind the US and in front of China, and I keep looking at them wondering, why are they going so well?
Barry Guy speaking from Rio. The number of emergency psychiatric assessments in Christchurch has more than doubled since the earthquakes struck. Mental health services are creaking under the pressure, with rates of mental illness and requests for treatment skyrocketing. The issue is explored in the online documentary series Christchurch Dilemmas, a collaboration with Radio New Zealand. Their footage and interviews are featured in this report from Alex Ashton.
Before the earthquakes in 2010 and 2011, the rate of mental health problems in Christchurch was well below the national average. A medical officer of health with the Canterbury District Health Board, Dr Alistair Humphrey, says that's no longer the case.
In 5 years, mental health problems have climbed steadily in all age groups and at all levels of severity. The problems that we're seeing in the hospitals and in the community are continuing to climb.
The statistics lay the reality bare. Since the earthquakes, emergency mental health presentations have more than doubled, and emergency psychiatric assessments alone are up a staggering 124%.
Trauma from work sites, we see alcohol and drug-related problems, and more than ever, we're seeing mental health problems.
Christchurch hospitals are feeling the pressure. Dr Scott Pearson is the clinical director of Christchurch Hospital's emergency department.
What we're seeing now is a result of chronic stress on the population of Canterbury. People who tell a story of multiple moves since the earthquakes, ongoing discussions and debates with insurance companies, and that creates chronic stress, and there's no doubt that that affects their physical health.
Police call-outs to suicide attempts have increased dramatically in the post-quake years, another sign that many in the city are struggling. The Health Board's Clinical Director of Mental Health Services, Dr Harith Swadi, says the services are stretched.
Mental health is the ultimate index of a community's ability to cope and manage through the difficulties that have come after the earthquake. Our job is to support the community to do that, and we are stretched to do it.
And the number of children using mental health services is up by nearly 70% since the quakes. Canterbury's Clinical Director, Adult Community Services, Dr Perry Renison, says they're also seeing a particular increase in 18 and 19-year-olds in crisis.
The schools, parents, wider community that normally would provide support and teach resilience are also struggling and not there for them as they used to be.
Adding to the strain are the thousands of migrant workers who, while critical to the rebuild, come with their own health needs. There are 5,600 migrant workers on temporary work visas in Canterbury. Alistair Humphrey says overseas workers often aren't eligible for health funding in New Zealand, and people from other parts of New Zealand don't get funding in Christchurch. For Checkpoint, Alex Ashton.
And you can see the full documentary series on the Christchurch Dilemmas website, Christchurch Dilemmas. Let's go from Christchurch to Wellington, where the cable car reopened today after a $5 million mechanical and aesthetic refurbishment. I hope you can still sit on the outside. To celebrate, the City Council's been offering free rides on the attraction all day. Our reporter Emile Donovan took a ride earlier this morning.
From the hustle and bustle of Lambton Quay to suburban Kelburn in less than 5 minutes. The official reopening of Wellington's iconic cable car today was met with enthusiasm by a throng of tourists and locals.
It seems cool so far.
Just waiting for the views. I know it's going to be good.
Yes, we think it's awesome.
Blown away by the marvellous way they've done it.
The 114-year-old cable car's latest refurbishment cost $5 million, which was spent on optimising the driving and control systems, refurbishing the carriages, improving cable car lane and constructing a new ticket booth. But today, the rides were free. One of the passengers, Jen, says the revamped car is beautiful, practical and a boon for the city.
Luxurious, with attention to detail, with the lovely maps that they've got on the wall that you pointed out to me, and all the attractive lighting in the tunnels. I think perhaps the tourists are going to be pretty impressed, and I hope so.
The 612-metre railway departs from ground level, just off one of Wellington's busiest streets. It rises 120 metres through a colourful tunnel before dropping passengers off at a picturesque spot in the heart of the leafy botanical gardens overlooking the city. About 1 million people use the car every year. It's part tourist attraction, part public transport. And the passenger service manager Matthew Hardy says this is a unique selling point.
A lot of places in the world, these sort of cable cars, are just purely a tourist attraction now, whereas, we've got links to Victoria University, to the residents of Kelburn, so it's used on a daily basis by people just to go about their regular business in Wellington.
One of the car's drivers, Danny Murphy, says the revamp makes his life a lot easier.
The seats all been done up, new flooring, the whole car's been done up completely. The outside has got some vinyl on it instead of paint, and up top there's all the new engineer motors and computer gears and all sorts of stuff. I'm pleased with it personally, yeah.
The car itself is already functional, but refurbishments to the lane are ongoing. They're expected to be completed in October, just in time for the cruise ship season. For Checkpoint, Ko Emile Donovan, 10A.
If you're watching on television, I was utterly caught out by that. We were reminiscing. We all have, because I think one way or another we're all Wellingtonians except for young Kelvin. Kelvin, can we have a shot of the control room, please? Jeremy, Pip and I are Wellingtonians one way or another. Kelvin isn't. You haven't lived, Kelvin. We're all doing cable car reminiscences. And I apologise for being caught out mid-flight. Do I have to do a back announce? Is there anything else I have to say? Cable car? No, good, okay. We're going to begin the next interview with a spoiler alert. It begins with one man and a conversation about water, and it ends very differently indeed. It may, for example, involve a 9-year-old boy and a pet lamp in the studio with us. But let's begin at the beginning with 10 of New Zealand's 15 Olympic medals coming on the water, sailing, canoeing and rowing. The question is how and why? What is it about water and New Zealand competitors we so consistently do well at the Olympics? And to help answer that, we were joined by Rob Hamill, record-breaking transatlantic rower, Atlanta Olympian and World Rowing Champs silver medalist.
Well, we're completely surrounded with it, aren't we? And it's a part of our livelihood. We all grow up with it, and it's our rivers, it's our lakes, and obviously the ocean surrounding us. So I think there's a natural gravity that we can't help but be there, can't we? And getting amongst it all. And obviously there's a lot of support, great support going into those particular sports as well. Although you could argue the kayaking could do with a little more support from what I understand. I think yachting and certainly rowing gets a lot of support.
Yeah. Also, you're going to be modest about this, but actually, if you are a young New Zealander with ambitions to participate at the Olympics or compete and succeed on the international stage, I guess there's rugby and there's netball. Yeah. And then if you're looking around, the people who have won and been world champs and set records and all of that kind of stuff are often on water.
Yeah. Yes, it's right. Look, there must be, the World Cup rugby must have seen a huge uptake of rugby playing in our country, and you're going to see the same thing now with rowing again, and obviously the kayaking and in particular the sailing. God, what a great outcome that was. And I know as a kid watching our athletes performing at the highest level, it became an aspirational thing. For me, the rowing thing was obviously a part of that. And watching Weibo Veldman from Whakatane Rowing Club that I was part of later on.
So you remember that, as if you remember having heroes on the water?
Sure, yeah. Although one of my biggest heroes was Ali. Not that I was ever going to jump in the boxing ring. But you do. It does create aspirational situations, I think, for young athletes. And sport is definitely an integral part of our society. And I think it saves a lot of our younger kids coming through that, having that path, that outlet, that team camaraderie and all that sort of thing, I think it's huge. Can't undervalue it.
Speaking of special young New Zealanders, we have one in the studio with us, don't we? So we've got your son Ivan here. Hi, Ivan. Welcome.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. How old are you, Ivan?
9.
Well, it's lovely to have you here. And you've come up talking for the day with your mum and dad, and your mum is sitting through there watching. Oops, no, I just made my seat fall down. Your mum is sitting through there watching. And also, you've brought a special friend, haven't you?
Yep.
Where's your mate?
Just here.
Can you... So for people listening on the radio, Ivan, who have you just introduced us to?
My lamb, Mello.
So your lamb has come with you to Auckland for the day.
Yep.
Mello is very, very cute.
Very cute. The force is strong in this one.
So was Mello orphaned? How come you've got Mello as a pet lamb?
Well, she was one of triplets, and her mother died, and so we got it from a farmer. But because she had so many more animals, she couldn't look after all of them. So she phoned us up and said, "Oh, do you want a lamb?" We're like, "Yeah, sure."
And I have to describe the scene for people listening. Rob, can you describe the scene for people listening as a proud dad?
So we have a beautiful little lambie here. It's probably 3 weeks old, Ivan, sitting in the studio with John. We were on the street today and met one of your fellow producers who dragged us in. So you've got to come in. Okay, righto. So we were just up here for the day.
So Mello is sitting on Ivan's lap, and it just makes me happy. And when Mello and Ivan were walking through the newsroom...
Oh... What a babe magnet.
It kind of works, doesn't it? There's a message to us all.
It is a message.
That's right.
He's a beautiful boy as he is, but he doesn't. But it's an advantageous little side item to have with you.
You kind of know this about sheep and lambs, but I've never really thought about it to this extent. Boy, they're domestic animals, aren't they? When they're domesticated.
Yeah. I mean, yes. Yeah. She sleeps with our dog, our lab, at night outside of course. Hence, she's got a little coat over her that our neighbours gave us. And it keeps her warm at night because she doesn't have mum to cuddle up to, although she does cuddle up to the dog, doesn't she, Ive?
Yep.
What does the dog think of having a baby lamb, a pet lamb cuddling up?
She thinks that she's the parent, basically, and usually when we take her inside, Dale feels quite sad.
Mello's almost falling asleep, Ivan, on your lap.
Yes.
That's just so sweet.
Isn't that lovely?
It's absolutely delightful. And so, because you guys live in rural Waikato, sort of halfway between Hamilton and Raglan, right?
Yep.
Beautiful home there.
Yes,
out in the middle of nowhere. Oh, magic. So, what do you think Mello thinks of downtown Auckland?
Well, she doesn't really know it, so I guess it's fine, I guess.
Mello seems unflustered by everything, including being on the radio.
Can the viewers see the face? I know which way her face is, because I reckon it's a classic.
If you're listening to this on the radio, you have to watch it online later, because Mallow is now eyeballing the camera with I think, the aplomb of a pro.
I reckon the force is strong in that one, John. Look at it.
That was the most delightful visit earlier today, completely unexpected. Rob and Rachel and Ivan and Mallow and a little lamb, a 3-week-old lamb walking through the newsroom brings such a silly amount of joy that it was absolutely delightful. Thank you, Hamel Whānau, for calling in. It was lovely to see you and Mallow. That brings the week to an end. We have an excellent team who make Checkpoint. People work really hard, and I'm proud of the work they do. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for all your hard work. Great team. And we'll be back on Monday at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The most likely cause of the contamination of Havelock North's water is faeces from sheep and cattle washing into the supply in floods 2 weeks ago. Some banks are reviewing their KiwiSaver investment policies after it was revealed they were putting customers' money into cluster bomb, landmine and tobacco manufacturers. A national day to commemorate the battles of the New Zealand Wars 150 years ago gets the go-ahead. And New Zealand has had its most successful day at the Olympics, winning 5 medals. Our next news and weather is at 7.
Tomorrow morning, why Professor Jacinta Ruru teaches Māori creation stories to her law students. Why Ryan Griffin has blended Aboriginal stories with a comic book hero. And why Gun Owners of America's Larry Pratt has blended the right to bear arms with the Bible. Join me, Ken Hill, tomorrow morning from 8.